All right, well, as a preliminary matter, this is Doug Lucenti, Select Board Member from Lexington and Chair of the Hanscom Area Towns Committee. Permit me to confirm that all HATS members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Voting members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. We have Bedford Select Board Member Emily Mitchell.
Affirmative.
Okay. Concord Select Board Member Linda Escobedo. See Linda. Linda, if you are here and you're under a different name or phone number, if you could raise your hand. And Lincoln Select Board Member Jim Hutchinson.
Affirmative.
Excellent. We also have non-voting members and other anticipated participants on the call tonight. When I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Lexington at-large member Margaret Copey.
Here.
Lexington Planning Board member Charles Hornig. Charles, I couldn't hear your voice.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now, yes. And Lincoln Planning Board member Gary Taylor.
Affirmative.
Excellent. And Bedford Planning Board member Steve Hagan.
Here, present.
Excellent.
And all of the above.
And from the Hanscom Air Base Group Public Affairs, Glenn Kernuski.
Right here.
Excellent. I don't think I missed anybody. Okay, so good evening. The time is now 7 p.m., 7:04 p.m. on Thursday, May 18th, 2023. And I call this open meeting of the Hanscom Area Towns Committee to order. For this evening's meeting, the Hanscom Area Towns Committee is convening via the platform Zoom as posted on all 4 town websites. Members of the public can view and participate in the meeting webinar from their computer or tablet by clicking on the link posted with the agenda. Please note this meeting is being recorded and may be publicly available for future on-demand viewing. A few reminders before we get into this. Please mute your microphones if you're not speaking. And when you're called upon to speak, please speak as clear as possible for minutes. And any votes taken during this meeting will be by a roll call vote. Okay, before we get too deep into the agenda, I just wanted to thank everybody for coming tonight and for participating. I know this is a long time coming. As you all probably know, this is not only my first time chairing the HATS, but it's also my first time attending a HATS meeting. So I'll ask everybody for their patience and indulgence tonight as I try to get up to speed. And I will hopefully be relying on all my colleagues here in this committee to help me with all their institutional knowledge. And if you have suggestions, please feel free to speak up. Given that this is the first meeting this committee has had in quite some time, I'm hoping that tonight we can focus some of our attention on regrouping and setting up a great path forward so that for the next several months, we can get HATS back on track and into a very good rhythm. We'll also, after we spend some time on administrative items, we'll also spend some time catching up on the issues that each of our communities are facing. And we'll hear from our colleagues at Hanscom on what's happening there. So our first item on the agenda tonight is introductions. Although I did mention everybody by name, I would like to ask each person to introduce themselves and maybe give a brief history on their involvement with HATS, because many of you have had many years of involvement with HATS. So I'll just go around the how it's listed on my computer screen. So we'll start with Glenn.
All right, first out the gate. Well, first of all, it's a pleasure to see some of you again and a pleasure to meet the rest of you. My name is Glenn Kernuski. I'm a resident of Danvers, Massachusetts. Although I grew up in Marblehead, I am currently the community engagement chief for Hanscom Air Force Base, working in their public affairs office. And I actually came on board just a couple of years ago, just before COVID happened. So I'm fairly new at this. So I've attended. I think I've attended 2 HATS meetings in person, and the rest has been Zoom. So I have one up on you, but not by much. So.
All right. Well, that's good. I don't feel as bad now. Thank you, Glenn. Jim.
Hi, everybody. Jim Hutchinson, Lincoln Select. First time on hats, so I don't have a lot of institutional knowledge. JD, Jonathan Dwyer, has joined us tonight, so he might be able to speak a little bit more about history of hats from a Lincoln perspective. Thank you, JD, for attending. I do have some Hanscom background, though, as I have paid attention to what's happened at the base and at the civilian airfield for 20 years now, and I've been a resident of Lincoln for that time as well.
Great, thank you. Charles?
Sure. I'm Charles Hornig. I'm on the planning board in Lexington. This is my very first HATS meeting due to the long drought between meetings. I'm longtime planning board member, longtime Lexington resident, no particular experience with hats and just trying to learn the ropes and what the role of the group is.
Emily?
Sure, I'm Emily Mitchell from the Bedford Select Board. I've been a HATS member since 2019. When I first joined the Select Board, I was Mike Rosenberg's alternate, and then became the Bedford rep, and I was chair of HATS in 2020, 2021, when we had our first full year of Zoom, which was an experience. I'm also the Bedford rep for the Hanscom Field Advisory Commission. I serve on that board with Margaret and several others. So I am the Hanscom person in Bedford for now.
Great, thank you. Gary? Oh, Gary, you're on mute.
I've been involved in Lincoln politics for a long time. I was a selectman for 9 years. And have been involved in HATS related activities for a long time. My wife is also on the Lincoln School Committee, so is intimately tied up with the contract relationship between Hanscom and the Lincoln school system. So, and of course, I was on the Housing Commission for several years, and the base housing is all in the town of Lincoln, actually. So institutionally, I'm in, kind of aware of school issues, housing issues, and more generally, HATS issues for quite a long time.
Oh, great. Sounds like you got a busy household over there. Margaret?
Hi, thank you. Yes, Margaret Copey from Lexington. I have been on HATS and HVAC both for probably more than 20 years. So do have a lot of institutional memory. I am a non-voting member of HATS, but a voting member of HVAC.
Thank you, Margaret. And Stephen?
Hi, I'm Steve. I'm on the planning committee in Bedford. Also been on the Conservation Commission for probably at least 15 years and been involved in HATS on and off for at least 10 years. The reason was wetlands at Hanscom and the creek there and the beaver activities that create dams and water spots for large water birds, which then create difficulty at HATS. So I've been involved in that. I've actually presented a couple times at HATS, but quite a while ago when there were beaver issues and others representing that. And then if you're doing the family stuff, my wife's also on the Bedford Board of Health, and there's another ancillary Hanscom activity, not probably what this group is going to do, where there was pollution from many years ago due to the cleaning chemicals and varieties of others, and there's an annual inspection, and she's part of the tour that does that inspection because she has a PhD in chemistry and she knows what those big words, I don't know what they mean, but I just ask her. All right, that's what I do.
Thank you, Stephen. And I know we have on the phone, I believe that will be Linda, but Linda, is that you that dialed in?
Yes, that is.
Oh, hi, Linda. Welcome. We're just going around and introducing ourselves and our past involvement with HATS, if any.
Very good. Would you like me to do that now?
Yes, please.
Okay, good. Linda Escobedo, I'm on the Concord Select Board, and I joined HATS about 4 years ago, representing Concord. And it's always an interesting discussion, and I'm glad to see we're meeting again.
Yes, me too. Thank you, Linda. And thank you everyone for introducing yourselves. Our first, this is our first meeting back after a long time, as I said. I put this item on the agenda next, which was to approve the meeting minutes from June 30th, because that was the last meeting I found posted online. I don't know if anyone who was around during that maybe last meeting knows where the minutes might be or where a recording might be or anything to try to get that caught up. No. Okay.
Well, I do know that, this is Linda again,
hi, Linda.
Escobedo speaking. I do know that the last meeting that HATS held, and I'm not sure if it was June 30th or a date after that, the Lincoln representative was going to both post the meeting, and I would have to go back and look at some minutes to see my notes to see who did the minutes. But I do know that the last meeting never got posted by Lincoln. And Concord did reach out to Lincoln to try to get that posted, but it never did happen.
All right, so maybe Jonathan is with us also. Jonathan, if you want to introduce yourself and maybe you could speak to that.
Sure do. I've got my computer in front of me. I'll look to see if I have that on my hard drive.
All right, that would be wonderful, and then we can at least get that. If you can get that to me, if you don't mind, I'll happy to have it on the next agenda, and we can vote that along with hopefully these minutes. So speaking of minutes, I guess it would be helpful for me to understand how minutes maybe happened previously.
What we did the year that I was chair was we just set a rota. We said, here are the dates. And for this meeting, it's going to be Bedford, and then the next meeting Concord, and so on and so forth. Okay, so why don't we do that? And was it typically the select board member that did the minutes? Yes. Okay. The voting member. Why don't I'll start. I'll start with Lexington, and why don't we plan with this? We'll do. I think there is a listed rotation in the memo of understanding for the chair. It's alphabetical, yeah. So Lincoln would go next after you. Okay, so Bedford, Concord, and then Lincoln. Okay. So if that's okay with everybody, we'll go forward with that plan where I'll do this meeting and then I'll put on the future agendas Bedford, then Concord, then Lincoln. Okay, good. Sounds good. One more administrative item out of the way. Linda, did you have something to say? No, I just said that sounds good. Oh, excellent. Okay, perfect. All right, so we'll add that and look forward to getting that on there. So one other item I had on the agenda, which is just really sort of a brief, I put it under mission and goals and membership. I spent some time looking at all the documentation related to HATS, and thank you to Margaret for giving me some older information that was available. And then of course the HATS website had a great deal of information as well. And so I just wanted to talk through at a minimum the voting and non-voting membership to make sure that we're all up to speed and up to date on who the current folks are, and talk a little bit about the rotation of chair, because I think in the memo of understanding or memo of agreement, I think it's on January 1st, but I think the practice has been to rotate it on, sometime in the late spring. But I would like to ask that as well as an update from folks, as that's what the past practice has been and maybe what we should do in going forward. So first, we'll get into the voting and non-voting members. So I know from Lexington, we have Margaret and Charles and myself. And I know from Bedford, we have, Steve and from planning board, and of course, Emily from the select board. Is there anyone else from Bedford that was identified or
has been identified as a at-large or a non-voting
There's-
member?
Yeah, there is not.
Okay.
There is technically a vacancy, so if someone were to apply, we might have a third member, but that hasn't happened at this point.
Okay, all right, that's, I just want to make sure I'm not leaving anyone out from any community. Margaret, did you have something to add on the membership?
Yes, I don't know who our third member is. It should be somebody representing conservation. And I don't know if
Okay.
you were able to see that. I do see that Richard Canale is on the webinar. And I don't know if he was that person or not. You might have to check with him.
Conservation? From,
Yeah, the seats were for, the voting members were select board members.
Yeah.
And then planning board, conservation, and an at-large were the other, were the three non-voting.
The town
Okay.
clerk says that we have 2 vacancies right now, Margaret. They don't know about you.
I know, they
okay,
dropped me off somewhere. I never got formally dropped off, so that's a town, I'll let her know.
okay. And if you need me to get involved, Margaret, let me know.
Right, right.
Say something. So if, all right, that's helpful. We have one opening. Technically, we'll get that figured out. And Bedford has a couple, or at least one opening as well. So that's helpful to know. And so for Concord, obviously we have Linda on the select board. And then I don't know, Linda, if you could help us identify who the planning board member is that's assigned to Hats.
We've just, we have a number of changes in our planning division right now, so I will have to update that.
Okay. Thank you. If you could let us know, that would be good. We just so I want to make sure I'm inviting the right people and we're getting the right
Absolutely.
involvement. And if there's any other at-large member too, that would be great. And then for Lincoln, we have Jim, obviously, for the select board, and then we have Gary for the planning board. And I was told that Ephraim Flint is the alternate for the planning board, which I think that's correct. All right, thank you. Gary, is there anyone else from Lincoln that's been designated as an at-large member?
Not that I'm aware of, no. Jonathan.
Okay.
Maybe.
Well, yeah, Jim.
I'm not aware either, although I wanted to bring up the possibility that there's a lot of climate issues that we talk about, or I think ought to talk about. So I'm wondering if either the conservation person or the at-large person from Lincoln might be a climate person.
Okay. And I
But I don't
think,
have it. I don't have it right now, Doug. I'll have to
yeah, and I think if
get back
you
on
are
that.
in Lincoln, if that's someone I think you want, I think that's probably up to each town to, figure out what they want. I think in my seat, I just want to make sure I'm not leaving anybody out. And I want to make sure up to this point, I haven't messed up yet. It's only been 10 or so minutes. So I want to make sure I'm not forgetting anyone. All right, this has all been very helpful. Thank you. I think we're in pretty good shape. And I'm glad for the next topic. I got Jonathan still with us on the call because one of the other items was the website domain renewal. And I just want to, again, make sure we're all on the same page with who is responsible for which part of that and how that actually has operated in the past. And Jonathan, if you don't mind, sort of talking about what's involved with that. Or what
Sure thing.
is left.
Thanks. And it is a very primitive website hosted by squarespace.com. And there is an annual fee for the hosting, and that gets rotated with the chair. So whoever the chair is, that town pays for it. I think it's about $250 or so.
Okay.
And the only thing that we do on the website really is I just maintain the members, as you all were talking. Steve Gladstone was a non-voting member for Lincoln, but he's no longer associated with the planning board. So that's probably an opening that Jim's going to be figuring out. And lastly, we post a link to the recording and we post the agenda and the minutes. So those are the three tasks that we typically do after a meeting to raise awareness of what happened and when. And there's one other thing. We post the agenda here as well, but also the chair town posts the agenda on their site as well, and they typically provide the recording that we would link out to.
Okay, so the recording is hosted typically, where is it typically hosted? On the town's site?
Yeah, usually whoever the chair is, they would be recording it. You know, in one point we would have been hosted at that town because there was no online, and
Yeah.
we would get a link from their video specialists, and we would just post it to our site as well.
I see. Okay. All right, I will work on that with our LexMedia. And as far as the renewal is concerned, I think that was up very soon.
Yep, it's up now. The due date is the first couple days of June for payment.
Okay, and is there an account or something that needs to get transferred over to someone
Yeah,
to do that, or is
Yeah.
that something you could transfer to someone else?
yeah. I would encourage one of the people on the phone, on the call, to raise their hand for this simple activity. I would provide them with an account on Squarespace and walk them through the tasks of uploading those materials. And what I've done the last couple of years is I've just paid the fee off my own credit card, and then went back to the town
Okay,
for reimbursement. And I'll just do that this year to make it simple again.
all right. I mean, I can also do that too. I don't mind, but
Okay.
I'm happy to either way, Jonathan. I appreciate that. So we do need to transfer, obviously, the updating of the website to someone. I would assume Jonathan doesn't want to own that forever. Emily, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I'm not actually raising my hand to do that, but I have done it. Jonathan taught me the year that I was chair. It's not terrible. It's not the easiest interface I've ever used, but it's doable. But it is funny to me because we were talking about this a little bit at HVAC on Tuesday, because HVAC also does not have a permanent home with one of the town websites, and people are, we should get our own website, we should do this kind of stuff. And I'm thinking, yes, and it becomes super complicated every year when you have multiple towns and places to do things. So it is very doable. It just, once you get out of the road, it gets a little bit harder to get back on track.
Yeah. Charles, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I was going to volunteer to do it if no one else wants to, but
I
someone
would-
will have to teach me. I mean, I do websites, but I don't know this one.
Thank you, Charles. You're a scholar and a gentleman. Appreciate it. And you made Jonathan happy and me happy. So thank you, Charles. So Jonathan and Charles, maybe if the two of you could connect, that would be awesome.
Looking forward to it. Thanks.
Okay, so any other questions or comments about the website renewal? I think we don't want to inherit the HVAC. I think we'll keep it to the hats only. I think expanding it probably makes it more complicated, but I can see the complexity of having it in 4 spots, and it is nice to have one repository, because each town posts stuff in different places and it gets a little confusing. So now I think we'll move on to a status sort of on our current municipal projects and initiatives for each town, and I'll just go around by town, and if each person could maybe talk about what sort of the big topics that have been going on in each community, just by way of a short update. I think again, our goal tonight later is to figure out where do we see this meeting going over the next several months. We will get into that about, what are really the topics we care about. I know Jim already mentioned, environmental issues. So we're going to try to focus our agendas on topics that are of interest to the 4 communities in Hanscom going forward. But tonight I thought if everyone could sort of give a brief update on, what are the big things going on in each town. So I'll start with Bedford. Emily, if you want to go first.
Sure. So big news in Bedford is we are searching for a new town manager. Our town manager, Sarah Stanton, left for a position with the state. She's now the Undersecretary of Economic Strategies under the Executive Office for Housing and Economic Development. So that is sad for us, really great for her. So we're very proud of her. But we have search committee will be fully staffed next week. We've hired a search consultant, hoping to have somebody in place by early fall. But so that's definitely a big change for us. The other big infrastructure thing is we are working on a new fire station. We acquired land last year. We are working with an owner's project manager. We just hired a designer. We have a building committee set up. So the design process is just getting started, which is really exciting. It's a kind of odd shaped site. It's in the center of town, which is where it needs to be. It's kind of long and skinny. So figuring out, where buildings are going to be on that site. There is a building currently on that site. So we're going to have a lot of conversations with the Historic District Commission to make sure everybody's on board with where we're going. So it is an exciting process. We started meeting with abutters last night. We're going to have community meetings, many community meetings starting later in June. And then the other big topic, obviously, is the North Airfield proposed expansion. So I think we'll all talk about that in item 6. So I won't belabor that at this point.
All right.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Emily. And Steve, did you have anything you want to add about Bedford?
Yeah, I'll add one subject because it's of interest to all 4 towns, although Lexington seems like it may have already accomplished it. And that's the MBTA housing zoning subject. Locally for Bedford, we have to have a zoned 50 acres of, various sizes that gets to 750 more units. It's a zoning exercise. So that's our top priority, along with starting our 10-year plan, which is also a state mandated. Everything else is local. But yeah, MBTA, we'll be curious how Lexington got through it. So thank you.
Good thing Charles is here because he could speak to that very, very intimately. So thank you for that update. Linda, do you want to talk about what Concord's been up to?
Sure. We just had well, not just, but in December, we had our housing production plan approved, and we were pleased to have that behind us. A lot of ambitious projects there, but clearly will be dependent on, we hope, some real momentum that's happening on the transfer fee at the state level that would help housing for all of us. We just had our town meeting on April 30th and May 1, and 46 items on the warrant. I would say that, you never know what's going to capture people's attention. And we certainly, one of them was a new zoning bylaw for mobile food establishments, including a lot of discussion on the town meeting floor about allowing ice cream trucks to go up the streets of Concord in the summer. And that did in fact pass, but after a surprising opposition to that opportunity. But some other things that were included in that warrant clearly are going to allow some, with a lot of restrictions, will allow mobile food establishments. And some of the reasons that this went on the warrant at this time is that we're anticipating the large crowds that will be coming for the 250th celebration. The other thing that captured people's attention on the warrant was a citizen's petition for the prohibition of gas-powered leaf blowers. And in fact, that did pass. There are some dates that have been pushed out depending on whether it was commercial or residential, private residential, out a couple years. But in fact, that did pass. And then our Community Preservation Committee approved more than $1.8 million worth of projects in all the categories that are allowed, and that was well received. There was an appropriation for the 250th anniversary celebration that I know a number of our communities will be involved in. And so we're anxious to see how the state money that's been set aside for that purpose will be allocated to the communities involved. And then outside of the town meeting, we just recently awarded a contract for the new middle school building, and the cost of the construction is $85 million, with the anticipated total cost being over $100 million, and that's without any state support. So there's going to be significant tax increases for our residents over the next number of years. And obviously, Hanscom field expansion is on all of our agendas, so we'll talk about that later. And I think that's the highlights.
Oh, thank you, Linda. That's helpful. There's a lot of cross connection with the topics for sure. And we'll go to Lincoln. Jim, do you want to start?
Sure. Let's see. Our school building project, the K-8 major renovation is pretty much done, pretty much on time, believe it or not. Our price tag, Linda, was less than 100 million. It was only 94 million. So we can commiserate on big numbers sometime if you'd like. We're starting another initiative to look at whether we should build a community center on the same Ballfield Road campus. That's a couple of years out, and we're just in the design phase right now and talking about what the layout should be and what the program offering should be there. We're have a project to put solar on our landfill. We're a couple of years behind some towns, but we had some hold ups due to being right next to Minuteman and figuring out where everything would run and getting permission to do it. I think we're not the only town that has recently adopted the bylaw for the fossil fuel free building code for new home construction. That just passed at our March town meeting. I think a couple other of these towns have done the same thing.
Yep.
So that's kind of fun. And let's see. I think that's, there's the Route 2A repaving project. I don't know if we want to bring that up or if Gary wants to bring that up. That's, I believe, is an ongoing HATS topic. So that's maybe should be on the agenda for some meeting or for some discussion. And
Yeah.
Yes, of course, we want to talk about North Airfield expansion. Got a lot of calls from constituents about that one.
Excellent. Thank you, Jim. Gary, did you want to add anything?
No, he's mentioned the Route 2A repaving. The other thing that he didn't mention is that we're in the process of considering redevelopment and rezoning of our mall area. And it's the Housing Choice Act is part of this problem because our mall is right next to the train station. But it's a bigger issue than that. And of course, it's the only real commercial area we have in town. And so we're doing a deep dive on how to handle that and it would probably be both commercial and housing. And Lexington figured out a way to handle that under the Housing Choice Act, and we're in the process of trying to do something similar, I think. Jim mentioned natural gas ban, the 10-town pilot program, which essentially is trying to limit the new natural gas hookups, and we'll be trying to figure out a way to practically implement that. The one thing he didn't mention, I think, is that our Hanscom school contract is up, and so we'll be renegotiating that contract with the federal government to handle the education on Hanscom campus. So that's a major issue. That's going to be, it's essentially handled by the school committee, but it's a major issue for the town.
Oh, that's great. Thank you for that update. So in Lexington, again, it's funny just to hear the town's updates because there's a lot of similarities on our end. And I'll let, Charles and Margaret, add, because we had some exciting things even happen today, but one of the big projects we're working on is we're building a new police station in the center of town. And that's, the steel's up. One of the big issues that's in flux right now is we are trying to make this a net zero building. And part of that is putting up solar canopies in our historic district. So it's gotten a lot of attention from a lot of stakeholders, and we're making good progress toward that, but we're on track to keep this as a net zero police station, which is a great accomplishment. We're also in the middle of we just finished our center streetscape project, which is we rebuilt all the sidewalks and streets in the downtown of Lexington. And we're in the process of doing what we call the Battle Green Streetscape project, which is where we're ripping up all the sidewalks around the Battle Green of Lexington. And we're putting in a roundabout on one of the corners. That's one of our highest traffic accident spots in Lexington. So that'll be interesting, I think, for folks, and a little bit of a surprise if anyone drives through town to see a roundabout in that area. We also finished our town meeting recently and had a lot of planning articles, so I'll let Charles talk about those. And I'll leave it there for now. We have lots going on in Lexington always, but Charles, do you want to talk about the planning changes?
But Doug, you really should have mentioned that we're also into the process of designing a new high school, which is going to be much more expensive than $100 million.
Yeah, we're talking 400 million at this point, but it could be higher than
We'll
that.
never do it for 400 million.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, since the last HATS meeting, the planning board adopted a new comprehensive plan and prepared and passed the MBTA community zoning. So we are in recovery because that was a lot of work doing both those things. The other thing that went, and obviously there was a certain amount of controversy that went with that in trying to achieve our goals of preserving our commercial areas while surrounding them with appropriate mixed use and residential areas that would support the commercial areas. We also we have what we used to call cluster zoning and is now called special residential developments, and we completely overhauled that, a long time, 5-year effort to overhaul that to make it generate more of the sort of housing we'd like to build in Lexington. Expanded slightly the boundaries of our center business district, and a variety of minor things that are escaping me right now at our recently concluded town meeting. The other thing that's going on that's, I think, important to Hanscom is we're in the process of working on a complete streets project on Bedford Street, Hartwell Avenue, and Wood Street, all of which are near the base. We're in the process of doing the 25% design. That's something that we hope will end up with some serious construction, maybe 10 or 15 years from now. So it's a long ways out, but there's an awful lot of studies going on right now on that. And beyond that, I'm a little wiped out because we had a long hearing last night on a solar project, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Charles. And Margaret, want to tell about the exciting news today, and maybe I know we'll talk about HVAC as well, but
Right. Yeah, well, the exciting news today is that Lexington now has a new cultural district. I know Bedford has one, Concord has 2. Does Lincoln have one? I don't think so. There's 55 of them in the state. And we had the ribbon cutting today, and I know Doug was there and some other, we had a very nice turnout. And your former town manager, Emily, was supposed to be there, but she has COVID. I know, we were hoping she would have been there. So, and it was a big effort on part of volunteers and town staff. So it's great. I'm glad we got that finished. And the only other thing I wanted to mention about that Route 2A repaving is that will go into Lexington because I believe the bridge over 128 is going to be redone. And what I saw from the DOT meeting I went to is that they are going to do roundabouts at either end of that bridge going, across that. They're going to narrow the bridge. That bridge was originally going to be the major thoroughfare until Route 2 got fixed up. So it's much wider than it needs to be right now. So and they're going to change those, the configuration, especially of some of the off ramps, because they're very awkward right now. So just wanted to mention that because that'll be of interest to people coming and going to Hanscom.
Yeah, thank you, Margaret. That is helpful. Are there any other updates or questions that folks have for other communities on any of the things that were brought up? Okay. We will move on to our Hanscom update, and we'll start, if it's okay with Glenn. Maybe Glenn can give us a rundown of what's happening at Hanscom and give an opportunity for folks on the call to talk about if they have questions for you and all that. Glenn?
I'll mute this. Can everybody hear me now?
Yes.
Good. So, all right, Hanscom, what's going on in Hanscom these days? All right, I have a few things to go over. I got a few items of interest to share with you all tonight. Many of you are probably already aware of this, and we appreciate anyone who's been assisting us with pushing out this information. But of course, on this coming Tuesday, May 23rd, is the Air Force Life Cycle Management Center hiring event for Hanscom Air Force Base. We are looking for people to come work for us. We have well over 400 civilian positions of various career fields available for folks to come and work with us. This hiring fair is going to be held at the Boston Marriott in Burlington. It's on 1 Burlington Mall Road in Burlington from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. It's free to attend, open to everyone who's interested in working for the federal government, college students, graduates, professionals, military spouses, veterans, whoever you are. If you want to come work for us, please come down and take a look. We've got positions in engineering, computer sciences, childcare, the trades, human resources, financial management, intelligence, logistics, contracting, you name it. Come down and take a look. We need good people to work for us. So please come on down. Moving on, some of the other things we got going on. As a direct result of a January meeting, January 2023 meeting between the governor and our Air Force Life Cycle Management Center Commander, Lieutenant General Morris, we're connected with AT&T Businesses Air Force leads and are actively exploring pathways for improving cellular service at the installation. So it's still very much in the planning stages, but this collaboration wouldn't have been possible without assistance from the governor and her team. So we thank them very much for that. Also in the improvements area, we're working with the Massachusetts Military Asset and Security Strategy Task Force and some other partners to explore ways and opportunities to bolster energy resiliency at the installation. Again, in the planning stages, but we're looking forward to working with them. As I'm talking about construction, of course, we have our own construction going on out at the Sartain Gate on Vandenberg Drive. The visitor center and commercial vehicle inspection buildings have been constructed. Still rough, they're not finished yet, but they're up. The guardhouse and the booths have had their foundations poured and concrete barriers are poured. The upcoming work in the near future, over the next few weeks, is going to be installation of like the air vapor barriers on the walls and roofs, siding, roofing systems, and they've tied in the main water line. They've done a lot of the duct work and sewer work. So we're making good progress on this new Sartain Gate complex. Project completion is still on track for late September. And then finally, we had a little story on our website, and something's going on. Our logistics readiness squadron just came up with a new commuter shuttle service for Hanscom employees. It's now available for them to use. There's 4 morning runs and 3 afternoon runs between the base and the Concord commuter rail system. So this is part of our initiative to reduce the overall number of vehicles on the roads in the local communities and coming to base. providing alternate transportation and cut down on commuter traffic and of course emissions. So that's all we got. Some of the highlights of what's going on the base. Pending your questions.
Great. Thank you, Glenn. Any questions for Glenn? Glenn, I know one thing of interest for Lexington, I know you mentioned the resiliency or energy resiliency plan. Is that has that been collaborated at all with any of the communities that touch the base?
I don't believe so. We're still very much in the early, in the early phases of planning. My colleague Jessica is really the guru on that, and she could speak better to it. If you have any questions, let me know, and I'll ping her and get you guys connected. So.
Yeah, I think it just there might be some interest from folks in Lexington, especially on our Sustainable Lexington committee, to figure out ways to work together on some of those items. I know some of my colleagues would find that interesting, and at least have a possible path forward on.
Understood. I'll let her know
where we can learn lessons from each other too.
Absolutely. I'll let her know you guys were asking, and we'll get something.
Yeah, what is the route?
Gary?
What is the route on the shuttle that you've set up?
I'm sorry, say again, sir.
What's the route on the shuttle that you've set up?
The information I have, it goes between the base and the Concord MBT Concord rail station. I'm not sure the exact route. I think it's just a direct shot from people coming into the rail station and bringing them to the base, but I'll double check for you.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that Lincoln has been interested in for a long time is some kind of more regional shuttle service. Lexington has some, but we're very interested in that sort of thing. So I'll be in contact with you and see what you've got planned.
Gary, there's also the issue of we've been talking about shuttling for the 250th kind of event. That might be a nice stimulus for thinking about something that endures beyond that celebration.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a good point, Jim. Any other questions for Glenn? Okay. So I think we'll get into the Hanscom questions of the Hanscom airfield. I know that's sort of been a big topic, a hot button issue for a number of folks. I'm still getting up to speed on that. So I'm gonna maybe start with the other towns on, where, or Margaret, if you want to pipe in too, as the HVAC member, and Emily as a HVAC member, and where, sort of where things are at, and maybe, what next steps and where maybe we could be of help as a 4-member community, and what HATS maybe can do, and how this might play into our future schedule and meetings and planning. So Margaret, do you want to start?
Sure. And I also noticed that Amber Goodspeed is on the call, and she's the one, she's a Massport employee that we deal with at the HVAC. And she usually makes a report.
I will put her, I will promote her, the panelist.
Yeah, she's in the past, she always was a regular attendee at all the HATS meetings,
Okay.
So I don't know.
I will make her a regular, then going forward, I'll make her a panelist on the future meetings.
I think that would work. Yeah. I'm not sure if maybe she should go first to talk about Hanscom, and then Emily and I could fill in from the HVAC meeting on Tuesday.
That
sounds good.
would be wonderful. Thank you.
Okay.
Amber, are
We
you
can
able
put Amber on the
to,
spot.
yeah, sorry, Amber, to put you on a spot, but are you able to hear us and be heard?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
We can, yes. Thank you for joining us, Amber.
Fantastic. You're welcome. I was pleased to get an invitation. It's been a few years since I've been invited to HATS, so I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to update you as needed, and I will eventually figure out how to get my home computer to the camera to work on a Zoom meeting through my Massport account, but I have yet to figure that out, so we'll work on that.
Okay.
But things that are going on over at Hanscom Field. Let's see. So at HVAC, I usually give a monthly project report update. So I'll just kind of brief any of the projects that we have moving right now. One of the things that's happening is Atlantic Aviation. Atlantic Aviation is one of our 3 fixed-based operators. That's sort of like they handle all the transient aircraft activity at Hanscom. They do all the fueling and all the aircraft handling. So this third FBO is in construction right now. They're building 3 20,000 square foot hangars. And right now they're in the process of steel erection. So construction on that project has been going, it's been going on for a few years now. And then the next update I have, actually we'll save North Airfield for later. And we have the runway 523 is our smaller of the 2 runways at Hanscom, and runway 523 south of the large runway will be reconstructed over the course of the summer. It's going to begin on June 5th, and it will extend approximately 35 to 37 days. During that time, runway 1129, our east-west runway, the large runway, will be, I'm getting some feedback. Is that?
Yeah,
are you
I
hearing
think
that?
if anyone maybe on, if we could mute anyone who's maybe not on mute. And I'll mute myself as well, Amber, so we don't get.
Oh, no worries. Sorry about that. I just wanted to make sure it wasn't just me and making sure that you could hear me okay. So that project, it's a 2-year long project. The first portion of the runway, the southern portion of the runway will be done this summer. And then next summer, we'll do the northern portion of the runway. Access to that construction area will be off of Virginia Road. And we've met with the town of Lincoln public safety officials and come up with a safety traffic plan for that. Anytime, if anyone has any concerns or questions, you can call, we're using the noise line, 781-869-8050. So again, that starts on June 5th. The 2022 Environmental Status and Planning Report is also underway. That's a 5-year comprehensive report in which we study all aspects of the airport, air traffic, noise, air quality, historical resources, natural resources, et cetera, et cetera. It's a very comprehensive report. It's not something that typically a general aviation airport does, but we do it every 5 years. We're currently in a study year right now, and we anticipate a draft to be submitted to the secretary at the end of this year. So data collection and analysis is ongoing right now. So the North Airfield area, we have had a few projects going on up there. The first is we've recently completed a series of T hangars. When Atlantic Aviation started their construction, we demolished 36 T hangars that were dedicated to single engine piston aircraft. And we've erected 8 hangars in their place in the North Airfield area. And then I think I've been updating the committee since June 2021 that we explored the release of an RFP for the North Airfield area, which encompasses just under 30 acres. We released that in 2021. We had 3 solicitations. There's been a lot of interest in the area and generally a lot of interest in, hangar space. Hangar space is at a premium at Hanscom. We don't have enough hangars for all the interest that we get. Last year, North Airfield Ventures, a company called North Airfield Ventures, won that bid. And they've also won a bid through the GSA process of the Navy hangar, which is an adjacent parcel. So it's not owned by Massport. It's actually private property in the town of Bedford. And so it just so happens that 2 of the same proponent has received a bid on both properties. So we've presented a brief on what we expect to happen there, and NAV filed an environmental notification form with MEPA in January of 2023. And then there was a public comment period through MEPA. The public comment period closed in February. MEPA issued a draft scope in late February, and the Secretary's EE&F certificate is on MEPA's website. You can download the information there. And right now, the Secretary heard everybody's very thoughtful comments about various aspects of the project. And the project team is doing a draft environmental impact report. Right now, they're studying all of the aspects that the Secretary asked them to study. So, noise, air quality, natural resources, et cetera. So all of those aspects are being studied right now. So until the project team has the draft environmental impact report out, which is expected to be released this fall, we do not have any information on that project. I think, the last update I have is signature flight support. So signature flight support, beginning in March 2019, began a project to improve and update their existing campus. They're our largest FBO. They have the most property on the airport, and they have been working on a new fixed base operator building. And when that's completed, which they anticipate to be complete in June, they will move into that new building and demolish the old one. And that's what I have.
Thank you, Amber. Appreciate that update. That's a lot going on. And, we'll make sure we keep you in the loop on obviously future meetings, because your perspective is very helpful. Margaret or Emily, do you have anything you'd want to add, or any other comments or feedback for the group?
I just was looking over what our agenda was for we meet on the third Tuesday of every month, and we've been meeting by Zoom, which I think we're going to continue to do. We get reports like this from Amber. We also get the activity report, which is the number of flights broken down, the number of noise complaints, and that gets presented every month. We had some things we were talking about the North Airfield, and it's an interesting. A lot of time was spent talking about new fuel sources for jets and airplanes, which is a very interesting topic, but seems like it's off in the future. And that's what I would add to this. And what about you, Emily?
Yeah. So just to add a little more context from Bedford's perspective to the North Airfield project. So the acreage that is looking to be developed now and the purchase of the Navy hangar didn't happen simultaneously. So the Navy hangar was actually went to auction through the GSA in 2017, I believe, and was purchased by an individual who then, I don't know if he was already partnered with the other folks who now comprise North Airfield Ventures, but it was the Navy hangar was sold at auction by someone who just wanted to restore it, which from Bedford's perspective, we also entered the auction. We did not have a bid anywhere near what the winning bid was. So the outcome of that was at least like, okay, it was a hangar, it's going to be a hangar. Nothing has happened to that site yet. And now we understand that, with this partnership with the winning bidder for the North Airfield development, like it's a bigger kind of development project than it would have been if it had just been the Navy hangar. So that's one thing. The proposal is for hangars essentially for private jets. That's the population that the winning bidder is looking to serve. And the argument has been that this will cut down on what they call ferry flights. I think Amber referenced this, where there's not enough space for someone to keep their plane in Hanscom, so they keep their plane somewhere else, fly their plane in, pick up the executive or whatever, who needs the private jet, fly it out of Hanscom, and then they do the same thing in reverse. So it's essentially double the flights than it that it could be if the plane were stored at Hanscom. So that's an argument that it's going to reduce the number of flights. And one of the things that HVAC has been trying to do, and lots of people who have commented on the project, is figure out, well, is that really true? If you have more hangars, aren't you going to fill them up? It's sort of like when you have a busy highway and you add a lane, do you just does the demand expand to fill the available space? So that's a general concern. There was significant pushback led by Michael Barrett, who is our state senator, also represents Lexington, on specifically environmental concerns, that private jet travel is one of the most environmentally unfriendly ways to travel, just given the outsize emissions versus the number of people that you're actually moving. So he wrote a letter that a number of people signed on to, saying this project just shouldn't happen, or this project should be only for electric planes. Let's use this as an opportunity to move Massport, to move the aviation industry into just electric and cleaner aviation technology. I did not sign on to that letter. There were some folks in Bedford who did, but in terms of town leadership or staff, we really didn't, because not that we didn't object to the idea of we need cleaner aviation, but we have a lot of just more specific kind of on the ground concerns, and we didn't want the conversation around this project development to be just focused on that one piece, because we also have infrastructure and utilities and water, sewer and stormwater, and there's wetlands. The part of the whole development area lies within the town of Bedford, and part of that is in one of our aquifer protection districts as well. So there are a lot of things that Bedford is concerned about. Just what is the impact going to be on our town, our services, our neighbors? There's a condominium community that was built in the past 15 years that didn't exist, when a lot of these earlier development interests started cropping up. So how is that going to affect those residents? There's a sports facility across the street. So I would say in the intervening months since February, March, when this all came out, most of the conversations in Bedford have been focused on the environmental concerns. Some of it is environments on the ground. How is it going to affect those things like water, sewer? Steve had alluded to, we have some Superfund sites through the Navy, not through Hanscom Field, that are still being cleaned up, and those are right in the same area. If you disturb the ground in there, are you going to compromise any of the cleanup that's already happening? And some of it are people who just deeply object to the concept of private jet travel anyway, who have a real philosophical objection and are trying to kind of force the issue, why are we prioritizing this? It's kind of a hard position for the town of Bedford to be in, because alternative uses for development on that site, like other kinds of things that you could do if Massport is insisting and can just say, we're going to develop this site, other kinds of uses could be more detrimental on a day-to-day basis than, a limo or a town car driving in on our roads. So yeah, we hear a lot. We hear a lot from neighbors who are very concerned, and we keep hearing that. I think right now we're all just kind of in wait and see, because the draft environmental impact report isn't expected until the fall from the proponents. So that's responding to all of the questions that the secretary had asked in response to all the public comments. So we're all just kind of sitting and waiting. What are we going to do here? What's actually going to happen? Does anyone, does the legislature have any power to say, we really don't want this to happen, please don't make it happen? I don't know. I don't know yet. So that's my 2 cents or 10 cents or 150 cents on the North Airfield where we are.
Thank you. That is helpful to bring things up to speed. And it is complicated from the sounds of it, especially for Bedford, given the additional environmental concerns beyond just the noise and the fuel or the energy that's used. There's a lot happening there. So appreciate that update. Are there any sort of early recommendations on, I know this is very early because this is our first meeting, but I think one of the things I'd like to see come out of this are, what can we do together to help advocate collectively for our towns in this effort, and maybe we're doing everything we should, and maybe we're not doing enough, but I welcome any suggestions that we can do as a group as well. So Jim?
Yeah, I love the idea of acting together if we can find a common statement or position among the four towns. I think what I understand of the history of HATS is that we're more powerful when we all speak together on issues that might be that we might be trying to get the governor's attention on, or the legislation on. So I'd be interested in, honestly, at this point of the North Airfield project, I'd be interested in learning more. So I'd be interested in inviting a few people to speak to HATS about this project in more detail, and get into a little bit of the detail, maybe not too far into the weeds, but some of the higher level points. I know that the residents of Lincoln are concerned about the greenhouse gas implications of expanded jet travel at the airfield. That's a big topic for our environmental folks in town who care about that. And there's definitely some agreement with Mike Barrett's position on the possibility of more jets wiping out the gains we are working so hard to make with other efforts to put solar panels everywhere and to, reduce our emissions in other ways with vehicles going electric and other things like that. So I know our green energy group spends a lot of effort on this, and they're going to be very demoralized if all that work is sort of wiped out by more jet greenhouse gas emissions. Anyway, I'm not an expert on this. I need to get up to speed about it a little bit more. So I would propose that we invite some speakers who know more about this. I did get approached by Save Our Heritage. I hear that Neil Rasmussen has an interesting presentation that might be of interest to other members on this committee. And I'd be happy to arrange or try to arrange him to join us perhaps at our next meeting if we want to do that. And I did get some dates that he's available if we're interested in pursuing that. I don't think he's the only person that we'd be interested in hearing from. I'd be happy to get other suggestions. But for me anyway, it would be helpful to get more facts about what the situation is, and also what the possible avenues forward are. None of us are trying to just, throw our hands up and say, no, we're not in favor of anything. But we need to know what's realistic and what's possible. So I think we need to learn a little more from my
Jim,
point.
do you have the report that came from the MIPA secretary? Do you
Yes,
have that?
I do.
You do. Okay, good. Does everybody have
Lincoln
that?
Selects made a big letter to MIPA when we were responding to the them scoping the draft EIR. So
Yeah.
we definitely got involved in that part of it. I'm really talking more about other parties that are offering, let's call it third-party opinions on what the situation is and what's possible in this. So I don't mean MIPA necessarily or Hanscom necessarily. I mean other people who know stuff about these topics.
Thanks, Jim. And Gary, did you have your hand up? Did you want to add on to that?
Because I'm so new to this, I am not aware of whether there's anybody that's studying this issue of shuttle flights, that are taxi flights, whatever they're called, that are supposed to be the problem that is generating the need for this kind of hangars. It's probably out there, but I'm unaware of it. But if nobody's looked at this, it seems to me something that needs to be reviewed.
Yeah, thanks for that, Gary. Amber, did you have a feedback on that question?
I did, yeah. So as part of the draft environmental impact report, they are studying this concept of ferry flights, and that will be included in the environmental impact report.
Okay, thank you. Just a question from the newbie perspective. Has HATS ever done a field trip to that area? I don't know, in the past, maybe?
Not in my tenure,
When
but
I
my tenure of in-person has only been a year of like real.
Yeah. Margaret, maybe you know.
Well, couple of things. First of all, we need to invite some of the higher ups from Massport to a HATS meeting at some point. I'd go all the way to the chair, ask them to come out. In the past, HATS has had Lieutenant Governor come. HATS is, depending on what the things are. We've had the head of the MBTA come. I mean, and it's very interesting to have them come and make presentations about what's going on in our area. We have had tours of the base that have been arranged with Massport. We would meet at the terminal. They would have one of the Massport buses there, and they would drive us all around and show us all the places there. And I find that very helpful because it's sometimes when they're talking about this place and that place, I can't picture it, or I couldn't. I can now because I've had those tours, and I would recommend it, especially now that we're in the good weather. So that would be a suggestion. And there was something else about HATS I was going to say, but I can't remember now. But I think we ought to think about inviting high-level people to our meetings. I think it's worthwhile.
Great. Thanks, Margaret, for that suggestion. Amber, just a question on.
Doug, this is Linda. Could I offer some comments?
Linda. Yes, please.
Thank you. This may not sound like it's going to relate, but it's an experience we've had with the 2A renovation and the Battle Road renovation. We had a number of people in Concord who were very concerned about the impact on the Minuteman National Park and the historic nature of that, and the fact that it's a gateway to Concord and Concord's history. And we wrote, the Historical Commission wrote multiple times to the group that was responsible for the Battle Road renovation. And finally, Concord is now a consulting partner, and some of our ideas we feel are being listened to with more interest at this point. So that I'm giving that example because I think the same thing applies here. And as the experience that many of you are having, we are hearing from many of our citizens, and I believe there's a petition with over 2,600 names that have already been signed in opposition to the Northfield expansion. And on Monday evening select board meeting coming up this Monday, we will be addressing this topic, including what are some of the approaches that we want to take going forward. And we are certainly being pushed by our citizens to write strong opposition letter to the governor, and even to have the governor come out and address this topic with us. Also on our select board agenda Monday night will be, I believe Neil Rasmussen will be speaking to us. I'm not sure, Jim, he's going to do the full presentation that you're referring to, but I do know that we've asked him to come speak to us as well. So I just wanted to give those two updates. Thank you.
No, thank you, Linda. That is helpful, and I think as it was mentioned earlier by Jim, it would be great if we could work together to, I think together we're stronger in this battle, and like you said, Linda, hopefully we can get people to listen if we make our voices heard effectively. So I think that's helpful information. Are there any other questions? Margaret, you have your hand up?
Yes, I'm glad that Linda brought up the 2A renovations in the park. I noticed that Simone Montaloni, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, Minuteman Park Superintendent, is with us tonight. So maybe we could get
Yes.
comments from her about her relationship with the Hanscom Field. That's been an ongoing thing. And I know there
I'm
are,
going to promote Simone to panelist.
and she probably could give some information about the relationship of the park to the airport and to the 2A renovation.
That would be great. Simone, if you don't mind, how you doing? Welcome.
Good
Sorry
evening.
sorry to put you on the spot, but if you don't
No,
mind
that's okay.
discussing that at all, that would be great.
Sure. So as it relates to 2A, so we have been, as Linda had mentioned, we are a consulting party under Section 106 to that particular project with MassDOT and Federal Highway. So there was a consulting parties meeting, the last one, probably a little bit over a month ago now. So they are continuing with their process. We also had the chance to have a follow-up meeting with them after that consulting parties meeting. So they're working through the finding of an adverse effect. So they haven't formally responded to the letters that had been submitted to them that was ahead of that previous consulting parties meeting, but they had shared in the follow-up meeting with the park that we should be expecting to see those soon. So we're hoping, hopefully by the end of May, as it relates to that particular project. As it relates to Massport, so we did have the opportunity to respond as part of the public comment period for the MIPA submission. We hadn't received a response back from our letter, but we would be interested to see the response that had come from the secretary as it relates to the MIPA filing. So if anyone has that link that they could share where that might be posted online, that would be great.
I could find that. It's almost 600 pages long. 350 of those pages are the verbatim comments, like all of the public comments from all sources, but still it's a meaty thing. So I have the whole document. I'll see if I can find a link.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that, Emily.
Thanks, Simone, for that update, and thank you, Emily. Any other further questions or comments on the Hanscom topic? Would folks be open to the concept of a site visit for our group? And I guess the bigger question is for Amber or Glenn or whoever the right person is to ask, is that feasible, or what type of lead time would we need for a visit to Hanscom if we were to do something like that?
I think that's a great idea. I'm happy to take it back to the office, so to speak, and find out what we can do.
Great.
I've been with Massport for 10 years, and we did, I think, 2 tours for HATS and HVAC in the beginning of my tenure, and we haven't done it in quite some time.
I think to Margaret's point, I share Margaret's view of sometimes just seeing it puts it all into perspective. And when we're talking about runway XYZ, it's, I'm sitting here going, I have no idea where that is or what direction it flies or who it impacts. So I think that would be helpful to see it.
And if I may, I would like to point out that the Hanscom Air Force Base is a separate entity from Hanscom Field. In fact, the Air Force Base, we don't have any planes other than the Piper Cubs for the air school there, and then the flight school, and then we really don't own any of the flight facilities. That's all belongs to Massport. So I think we have a hangar left where we put those Pipers, and then a part of the apron. So any actual aviation issues or questions would go to Amber.
Yeah, and maybe those should be, maybe it's 2 separate tours at different times too, that we would, separate the issues. But I think more timely would probably be the Massport type of a tour. Sounds like, I think people would be interested in that. So Amber, we'll wait to hear back from you if that's possible, and what timeframes that might be possible.
Yes,
As
I'll reach
far
out
as,
to you.
thank you so much. So our last sort of topic on the agenda tonight was about future meeting schedule and, what type of topics we want to look forward to over the next several meetings. I know the North Airfield project is a topic of interest. And we have some suggestions there of, inviting some higher ups from Massport. Jim mentioned Neil Rasmussen from Save Our Heritage. We just talked about maybe having a tour. So I think those are all great concepts to put out there for sooner rather than later future agendas. Are there other topics people want to see us pursue as an organization, as a group, beyond the North Airfield? Are there any other? I know in the past, again, just from talking to my predecessor from my board, we've had, a public safety night where, the police chiefs perhaps from each town came, or we've had a DPW night where maybe the DPW directors from each town come and talk. I don't know. I want to gauge sort of the level of interest from this group on where we can focus our energy and what people might be interested in. I just don't want it to be me by myself picking topics. So Jim?
Yeah, I'm interested in having the town departments trade notes on things, but I'm a little unsure about which departments have spoken recently and which ones might be due for touching base again. So I'd be open to suggestions on that front, but I think it's great for them to have reasons to talk to one another and share notes on strategy and practices.
Great. Emily?
I was going to suggest talking more about the MBTA zoning and housing choice that's affecting all of us. Obviously, Lexington's a little further along than some of the rest of us, but we can't escape it, or at least we can't without consequences. So I think that might be something that's worth talking about.
That's a great one. Maybe that's the planning directors coming to visit, as a group. That might be another good, tie in there, but that's a great idea. Gary?
Yeah, I share the idea of the Housing Choice Act, that we all get together on this. But, for Lincoln, this 250th celebration and paving a Route 2A is a big deal. So I hope that we can all try and coordinate on what's going to happen there and try and make sure that it all comes off in a way that we can be proud of, actually, because the country is going to be coming.
Yeah. Yes, they will. We hope.
Gary, is there
We've spent a lot of
anybody
time on that too, but it would be good to trade notes at this level as well. I think there's a meeting on June 1st with the Lincoln, Lexington, and Concord and Arlington group, the 250th committees on each of those.
Is it possible
Margaret?
to get
Sorry, Emma.
Bedford CC'd on those? I went to some of the early meetings and we don't have as much directly to do with it, but I would love to just be in the loop.
I will speak directly to our chair of the 250th committee and ask her to include you on.
Thank you.
Those types of regional meetings, and apologies if we're not meaning to leave you up, but Bedford does do things.
I did take it personally, but
no, it's good because we sometimes think, the path of it, and Bedford's
we
right
have
there.
the flag. We have,
Exactly. The pole capping ceremony. I heard about that yesterday. Yeah. Margaret?
Yes, two other groups that we might, this is just, there's no time limit on this, but would be the superintendents of the schools and Minuteman to tell us what's going on in their towns in terms of the schools, budgets, buildings, et cetera, capital projects. The other thing would be when Bedford gets a new town manager, would be to have the 4 town managers come and talk about what's going on in their towns.
I think that would be great suggestions on that front too. I think, including the Minuteman, is also another good idea. They're sort of a partner and neighbor of all of ours.
Mm-hmm.
That would be helpful. And I know they're in flux right now, so maybe not this week.
I want to wait on that.
Yeah.
Just a little bit. But that's a good.
Doug, this is Linda. May I add a comment?
Hi, Linda. Yes.
Sure. I'd like to go back to the inviting speakers regarding the Hanscom Field expansion. It may be interesting to have someone from the State Department of Economic Development to come speak to us on Hanscom. And I think that would give us another window on what the state is thinking.
That's a great suggestion. Nice to get all the perspectives. So I got some good, this is some good stuff to look forward to for sure. Let's talk about dates and places. I decided to do this meeting by Zoom just because we hadn't all met in a while. I wasn't sure everyone's schedules and availability, but I think in the past, I think HATS has met monthly.
Mhm.
I don't know if it's met every month.
Yeah, it was usually
I
like
don't know if
6
that's
times
too
a year.
much. How many times? 6?
It was like 6 times a year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does that sound like, what do folks think about that as a digestible? Because, the other thing I realize is all of the people on this call are all on boards and committees, and those boards and committees have pretty heavy spring schedules, and it gets difficult to add another meeting. And sometimes our very busy seasons. So, I think for us, for example, April's March and April are tough months to squeeze a meeting in because of town meeting.
So is December.
And December too, yeah, that's a good point. So I guess maybe just some feeling, if we said we're gonna plan 6 meetings out for the next 12 months, how do folks feel about that concept? Jim, do you want to add to that?
I was thinking quarterly sounded reasonable, although I think we need to pick whether it's 4 times or 6 times a year. I think we need to space them so we don't hit big busy periods for all of us. Town meeting time, forget it. Middle of the summer, I don't love having meetings in July and August if we don't really need one. And that's not always possible to avoid the vacation period because of timing of things that we need to talk about. But I was wondering if we wanted to meet once more in June before the summer break, and then target something like September. And I don't know, I'm trying to pick a schedule that doesn't hit some other big, busy periods for all of us.
Yeah, and I think September is probably a decent one. We end up typically having a fall town meeting at it seems to fall, well, sometimes it's October, but it's usually the end of October, middle of November timeframe. So that's always a difficult time for us in Lexington. I don't know if you all have fall town meetings typically as well.
Mhm.
I don't know what time frame those are usually at, but that want to try to avoid that, I would hope. But
Yeah,
Emily?
Lincoln has one, Doug, on September 30th this year. We usually do it in November.
Okay.
This year we're doing it in September.
Okay,
Yeah,
So
but
this,
that's the state of the town meeting. That's not the town meeting.
You're right, it's state of the town.
Yeah.
okay,
so the schedule that we
Emily?
had in 2020, 21, which was following previous years, was September, November, January, February, April, June. And it was the 3rd Thursday was our pattern.
So you said September, November,
September,
January.
November.
Yeah.
January, February, and then April and June. And June was usually the restructuring, when
Yeah.
things rolled over and the leadership changed. But Doug, I'm wondering if you want to stay on as chair for another year since you're just getting started?
In fairness to everybody, I think it's just easier to stay on.
Yeah.
Our board is in the middle of talking through our liaison assignments and who's assigned to what. I'm not sure where we'll land, but assuming we stay on, I think it's just, in fairness, I think I'll just stay as chair till, do my year of service. So I'm not coming in for one meeting and leaving. I don't think, although that sounds enticing, I don't think it's fair to everybody else. So we're looking at September, November, January, February, April, June. How do people's sort of initial reaction to that schedule sound?
Sounds good.
Okay, and is there a particular night? Again, I know select boards, we all meet Monday nights, I think, pretty consistently across the board. Planning boards,
Our planning board meets on Tuesday night, so we can avoid that.
okay,
And
Yeah,
we're
same as
Charles,
Bedford, Tuesday is planning.
Wednesdays. is planning.
Wednesdays is, yeah. So I think this is probably how we ended up at a
Our
Thursday.
third Thursday, yep.
Third.
Nobody does.
Is everyone comfortable with the third Thursday of the month, except April? We may need to do the fourth Thursday because I think that's, we may have the third Thursday is vacation week for April break. If my calendar is correct, but I'll have to check that one. So why don't, I'll put together a preliminary schedule with those dates, so it's on everybody's calendar. And I'll try to put a preliminary topic based on the topics we talked about. And then the last question is the where. Do people prefer Zoom or do people prefer in person? Or we can try hybrid as well. We've invested a lot of money lately, Lexington, in trying to get some of our rooms hybrid. It's been a struggle getting parts and pieces for the equipment, but we're making progress on that front. But would people prefer in person, or what do people think, Jim?
Although I would love to meet you all in person, it really helps to do it virtually in terms of how much time it takes. And also, it's a lot easier to take notes when you have two monitors in front of you and can look at you guys on one and type notes on the other. So I'm going to vote for virtual.
All right. Emily?
Yeah, when we used to meet in person, it was in Lincoln because Lincoln had like its TV set up, which was great and convenient for Lincoln people, but a bit of a haul for other folks. So I think given everything we're discussing and the amount of public interest, I think having it via Zoom, you know, in a webinar like this really is the way to go because more people can participate that way.
All right, I'm
I
seeing
agree.
Glenn shake his head. Glenn and Linda agrees. And Gary, do you have thoughts?
Yeah, I agree that the Zoom technology revolution has made these kinds of things much easier. But I do think that in-person connections do make a difference. And it may be that we get together like twice a year or something like that, where we just figure out a way that we all get together in some place and get to know one another.
Over cocktails, Gary?
Yeah, maybe, yeah, exactly. I mean, that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. And I do think that the Zoom technology is so much better in terms of allowing participation for people who have, you know, calendars that have them going all over the place. But I do think that it's important to have face-to-face connections once in a while, and maybe just twice a year or something like that. We could figure out a way to get together and talk to one another.
I think that's, if people are amenable to that, I'm certainly amenable to it as a concept. I think, you know, especially if we do a tour, it would be difficult to do a tour by Zoom. I think it would be a lot easier if we were in person on a Massport visit. So that's definitely one we can hope to schedule. And then I think if we can, you know, maybe a June one is a good one to, you know, connect. Charles?
I was just going to ask that we not do hybrid. I'm happy with in person. I'm happy with all remote, but mixing them leads to problems.
We have struggled with a little of that sometimes. And again, with the number of bodies in this group that are members or non-members, non-voting members and members, it does get a little busy. So how do folks feel about having the June meeting in person? Then we'll go to Zoom for the next several. Is that amenable to folks? All right, we'll plan that. So are there any other comments or questions or thoughts on schedules or future meetings or our, you know, agenda topics? Okay, so seeing none, thank you all for your patience tonight and letting me get through this. Jim?
I just wanted to suggest that you have a public comment period. We do have a few people who are watching in the wings and might want to say something.
Good. Thank you for that. Yes, we have 10 people still in attendance, so I will open it up now for and I'll put this on the future agendas to have a public comment at the beginning of our meetings. But if any folks on the call want to make a public comment, please click on the raise hand button on Zoom. Okay, seeing none. Again, I appreciate everybody's attendance tonight and appreciate everyone's patience with my newness. And at this point, I'll take a motion that we adjourn.
So
I'll
moved.
make the motion. All right, so moved. Emily moved the motion. Is there a second? Second by Jim. By a roll call vote, because we're via Zoom. Emily,
Aye.
Jim,
Aye.
Linda,
Aye.
and I am an aye. So vote of 4-0. We are now adjourned. And I look forward to seeing everybody soon. Take care.
night.
Good night, all.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Great to see you all again.